Hey, Callers, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Glad to have you guys here, and I hope you guys are doing well. We're going to be talking about World War III versus Enlisted today, comparing the two, talking about the pros and cons of each, what they do well, what they don't do well, and what they could learn from each other. Now, before we begin, I just want to say very clearly, I'm not going to be rating these games. I'm not going to be saying at the end of this video that World War III is a better game and nobody should play Enlisted, or that Enlisted is a better game and nobody should play World War III, or anything like that. Both of them are great games in their own rights, and they just have pros and cons, and that's what we're going over today. I think that if you like World War III, you would like Enlisted. I think if you like Enlisted, you'd probably like World War III, but I want to do a quick comparison video to kind of just show them off. So let's start off with the obvious thing, the gameplay. So in World War III, the gameplay is a little bit slower. It's something more a little bit closer to Battlefield than something like Enlisted. And I know that might sound kind of weird, but Enlisted does tend to be kind of a fast-paced game just by the nature of how the squads work. Because in Enlisted, if you get shot, you just switch to another squad member and you continue the fight, which makes engagements a lot more common, a lot more often. And they also mean that you're less worried about dying with a single squad member, because you just switch to another one and you continue the fight. And the only real time the only real downtime you have, is whenever a squad has been completely wiped out. While there's a lot more downtime in something like World War III, when you die. It's very close to like Battlefield. There's a lot more like stopping, healing, getting ammo, reloading, things like that. And then you move on to your next engagement. So while the time to kill in the game is pretty similar to a single soldier or something like that, a single fight in Enlisted, the actual overall engagements tend to be a lot longer in Enlisted than they are in World War III, right? Because again, the squad system in Enlisted really makes those fights drag on a long time, and that's a great thing about it. But that's a major difference between these two games. World War III, you have to move a lot slower. You also have to remember that the prevalence of assault rifles in World War III means that engagements tend to happen at medium range, right? Medium to even sometimes long range. Like the maps flow really well and still keep a lot of close quarters, kind of urban combat, but there are a lot of times where you're just fighting at medium range because you have the capability to do so. You have those assault rifles. And likewise, it makes crossing in the open very dangerous, because you could easily get destroyed by a, some guy with an assault rifle at a very, long range in a building somewhere, in a window, stuff like that. It makes you have to move a little bit slower than you otherwise would in something like Enlisted, where yes, a machine gun could gun you down, or yes, a sniper could get you, or a tank, or something like that. Yes, all of those are still prevalent in World War III, but everybody has that assault rifle. It'd be like in Enlisted if everybody had the STG, or if you guys remember the Modern Combat event from Enlisted, kind of the same concept there. So if I had to boil it down here, guys, World War III feels very similar to something like Battlefield, right? The old school Battlefields, maybe Battlefield 3 for its gunplay. And you can really see that with how the points show up. Each shot you do does a certain amount of damage, and you get points for that amount of damage. And it works very, very well. It feels like a modern Battlefield. It feels like what Battlefield 2042 could have been. Now, moving on to, of course, Enlisted, the game that we all know, of course. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. So like I've already mentioned, Enlisted squad system really drags out the fights. And I don't know, drags out is almost kind of a negative connotation. That's not really what I mean by that. I think that Enlisted squad system is what makes it good, and it is what makes it a particularly good game and an interesting game, because that squad system keeps the action going, right? World War III, there are a lot of times where you don't get a lot of kills. You're just kind of running around, capping some objectives. Maybe you kill one guy because there's just not a lot of combat going on, because, well, there's not that enemies around, right? You don't have any enemies nearby. While Enlisted, there are always fights going on. I mean, from the second you spawn, most of the time you are in the middle of an engagement, because when someone dies, they just switch to another squad member. And so wiping a whole squad takes time. It's a lot harder to do. And it just, generally speaking, takes a lot longer. So the engagements happen over a longer period of time. Both games, very, very fun to shoot people. I think one last thing I want to note is just how it feels to actually shoot someone in their their stupid face in this game. In both games, I think with World War III, everyone is a player, and so I think that just in and of itself lends it to being a little bit, I don't know, more competitive in a way. It makes you feel a little bit better when you shoot someone. But Enlisted, and I've said this so many times before, guys, I mean, the dopamine rush that you get from mowing down an entire squad with a PPSH or an MG34, or even blowing up a whole squad with a tank in Enlisted, is honestly pretty unrivaled. I don't really know any other games that feel like that. It's particularly amazing. It's a very unique thing to Enlisted, and it's a thing I really do love about the game. So that is one thing that absolutely cannot be discounted. But if you're looking for a game where you don't have those squad members and you don't have to deal with that kind of stuff, and you just don't like killing bots, but you like the kind of slower gameplay-ish of Battlefield or Enlisted, I think you might like World War III a lot, and you might like the gameplay and the gunplay of it a lot. Now, I'm going to move on to the next part of this, which has to do with the vehicles, and I'm going to kind of roll strikes, or the kill streaks. If you guys haven't played World War III, you haven't seen my videos on it, strikes are basically the kill streaks type things, or they're more like score streaks from Call of Duty, from the newer Call of Duties. And you can see me here driving around in a land drone with some AT rockets. Now, in World War III, there's tons of different things. You get to call in a support, which is typically like a radar or a jammer, and then you get to call in some sort of bombing run, which is either like a remote-controlled, you know, Predator missile type deal if you played the Call of Duties, or an artillery strike, just like Enlisted. And then finally, you get a vehicle, which can range from a land drone, an aerial drone, a like helicopter aerial drone, you know, versus a little like explosive, you know, quadrocopter is what it's called in the game, to main battle tanks, right? IFVs, main battle tanks, tank destroyers, all kinds of different things in the game that you can get. Well, we know, of course, in Enlisted, you get to bring either a single tank squad, plane squad, or, you know, a multiple of them if you have premium and have bought some extra squad slots. So let's talk about how both of these work after we just kind of explained both sides. Now, in World War III, I like these strikes a lot. I think they work pretty well. Getting a lot of points for your strikes is a major part of the game by capping objectives, getting, you know, just farming up those points so you can call in those big tanks, because tanks are a very important part of the game. But I think that overall, I enjoy the strike system of World War III more than I enjoy the tank system and the vehicle system of Enlisted. But that being said, that has a lot more to do with the things that are not big tanks and not big vehicles, because the big vehicles in World War III are awful. They feel weightless. They are too fast. Their turrets rotate way too fast. The IFVs that you start with in the game just absolutely dominate games. If you see my tips and tricks video for World War III, I mean, one of my biggest points was if you don't control the map with these vehicles, you will lose the game every single time. It really, really sucks, because a lot of the objectives as well are objectives that only really work if you have a vehicle, right? They tend to be very open. There tend to be very few infantry only areas on these maps, and so it really ends up sucking where you just kind of get dominated by vehicles, right? They feel too powerful. They're too hard to take out for the average soldier, and a lot of games get very ruined and get kind of they just feel bad, right? Because of the vehicles, right? The vehicles just feel weightless. They feel bad to play in, other than the fact that you're killing tons of people, and they look weird. They feel bad to play against. While Enlisted, I mean, the vehicles in Enlisted feel fantastic, right? They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they are very, very good, right? It's fun to be in a tank in those games. It's fun to be in a plane. They feel realistic. They feel weighty. When you fire the guns, they feel, you know, monstrous, like you're in an actual big tank. While World War III, it feels like you're in like an RC car or something like that. So I think overall, I really like the strike system. I like being able to call in radars. I like that modern kind of feel to the game in World War III, and the drones and stuff. All of that is fantastic. But the vehicles themselves, oh man, World War III really needs to learn from Enlisted in that regard. Learn how those vehicles feel in that game, because right now they feel terrible. Continuing on with gameplay, one of my biggest gripes with Enlisted is how there really isn't any team play. Enlisted just doesn't have team play, right? You're on a team together, and I guess the team play is playing the objective, but I mean, there's not really any interactions with your teams. You're not healing your team members, really. You're not reviving them. You're not giving them any kind of, you know, ammo or resources. Yeah, maybe you built an ammo box, but most of the time you're building an ammo box, it's for you. The biggest extent of teamwork in Enlisted comes down to building a single rally point or something like that, right? It's more of just individual actions that are done for the entire team, rather than like actually like two members of a team working together to win the game, right? Like it's very individualistic, which is fine. That's kind of the point of the game. It doesn't need to be very teamwork heavy, but World War III definitely calls back to those old Battlefield games. If you guys missed that about old Battlefields, I know I did, where you actually interacted with your team and it mattered who brought what gear, right? In this game, you can bring a med kit, you can bring an armor pack, you can bring an ammo bag, and you can bring a gadget bag. And these are all things that are incredibly important for your team, right? Like sometimes you get shot up, you need new armor. Sometimes you need to heal up. You know, sometimes you need more ammo. I run out of ammo all the time. And there's a very distinct difference between playing this game with a bunch of randoms and playing this game with all of my buddies from the Quad Bros Discord, like DeWins and Jason and Frankard and everybody out there, right? Like, it's absolutely night and day playing with an actual squad, because they'll have real teammates, right? You work together, you repair each other's vehicles, you work together where one of you is in the machine gun of a tank and the other one's driving with the main cannon, right? Just like those old Battlefield days. And it's honestly something that I really wish Enlisted had just some sort of more like teamwork in some way, some teamwork mechanics implemented into the game in some way. I don't know how off the top of my head, and maybe they don't need to be. Maybe that's really not what Enlisted is about, and I think that might be perfectly fine and reasonable. But man, I really love that the team play aspect of World War III. I love being able to call in radars for my team or call in an artillery strike. You know, you can play the kind of support role where you're always calling in, you know, bombing runs, or you're always calling in like, you know, radio supports or jammers for your team while they push, or, you know, you're always calling in support AT drones while your friends are in tanks and things like that. There's just a lot of different teamwork and working together kind of aspects of the game that is really lacking from Enlisted, I think. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something that exists outside of gameplay, or at least indirectly influences gameplay. It's not just shooting people in their dumb faces, but it has to do with it a little bit. And it is kind of the idea of trade-offs, right? And it's something that I have a huge problem with in Enlisted, and it's something that I think World War III does unbelievably well. It is absolutely something that I think Enlisted needs to do more of and can learn from. And it kind of comes down to this core idea about games and what games are. And to put it kind of in very simple terms, games are decisions, right? They're a set of decisions with an unknown outcome. That is what all games kind of boil down to, right? If you don't have decisions, you're not playing a game, you're watching a movie, right? And that's a really core part of every game, all games. And it's something that Enlisted really lacks outside of the gameplay, right? Gameplay has tons of decisions, right? Do you go left? Do you go right? Do you shoot a guy in the face? Do you wait till you get closer, right? That's easy stuff. But outside of the game, in the campaign, there are very few decisions, and that really, really bugs me about Enlisted. It's something that I've always had a big gripe with, right? If you look at the FG42 versus the FG42-2, there's no decision there. You always use the FG42-2. There is no benefit to using the FG42. It's just a worse weapon. It has worse accuracy. It just is a worse weapon, right? There is no benefit. And that is a very flawed thing, I think, about Enlisted. And that's not the only one, right? The M4A2 Sherman versus the Jumbo Sherman. There's no reason to use the M4A2 over the Jumbo, right? I guess it's faster, but that's not really a benefit, right? Why would I use the Stuart over the Sherman, right? It's got a smaller gun. It's a slower vehicle, right? Yes, I guess in War Thunder or something like that, the speed is relevant, but in something like Enlisted where you can't do these big flanking and that maneuverability is not relevant, it doesn't matter, right? So effectively, there is no decision. And again, there are so many cases of this in Enlisted, and that is a massive problem with the game. While in World War III, anything you do, any decision that you make in regards to your attachments or your vehicles that you take have pros and cons, right? If I choose to put a red dot sight on my gun, I am getting a better sight picture, right? I'm getting a sight picture through the red dot, but I'm losing aim down sight speed, which could be very relevant to me, right? That is a decision. That's a trade-off that's happening there. If I decide to put a vertical foregrip on my gun, I'm going to reduce the horizontal recoil, but I'm going to increase my vertical recoil. And yes, maybe this doesn't actually make sense from a realistic standpoint, but from a gameplay standpoint, it creates very interesting decisions, right? And it makes you be able to play around with your attachments, and you get to make the decisions of what do you want to do? Do you want to, you know, what's better? Is it better to take the vertical recoil reduction and increase your horizontal recoil? Maybe that's better for an AK-47, but it's worse for an M4A4, right? And you get to play with all of these different guns and figure out what's the best set of attachments, both for the weapon itself and for you. And it goes beyond that too. If you decide to bring a tank, then yes, you have a giant tank, but you're trading a lot of mobility versus like an IFV or something like that. You're losing a lot of anti-infantry firepower, but you're getting a lot of anti-tank firepower, right? Not to mention the fact that it costs a lot more strike points to call in an a massive MBT versus calling in just a little IFV. So there's just so many decisions that are being made there in the game and outside of the game, and choosing what you bring with your vehicles and what you bring or with your strikes and what you bring with your attachments and the different guns that you bring and how you bring. There's just a lot more decisions there. And it's something that I just desperately wish Enlisted had more of. In Enlisted, I just don't make a whole lot of decisions with my troops, right? Even perks don't feel that much of decisions. Perks a lot of the time are just take the vitality perk, right? There's like 3 or 4 perks that are particularly good, and that's about it. And I don't know, guys, it's just always bugged me. It's something that I've always really wished Enlisted did just a little bit better. Now on to the grind, something that I think we all know what my opinion is going to be on Enlisted about the grind. It is too much, but it is World War III's grind too much? And from what I've played, I'm going to go with no. I have about 24 hours in-game on World War III at this point, and I'm about level 29, and a lot of that was with a 50% XP boost. We'll talk about that. But the point is that I think that you level up pretty quickly. Max level is about 51, so I got to about halfway through the game, and I'm sure the XP requirements go up and up and up as time goes on. But even just by that, you can tell that getting to the end of the game is not going to take that long, right? The real grind comes from leveling up vehicles and leveling up weapons, which is fine. I would rather us have the unlocks and have the weapon to be able to play with them, and then unlock the attachments and the kind of goodies and stuff over time. I think that's a little bit better of a system, right? And World War III is monetized through cosmetics, it looks like. I'm not sure if we're going to have premium or premium system. I think they will have like boosters or something that will increase the amount of XP that you get. But as it stands right now, it looks to me like they're going to be going more of the direction of more cosmetics and selling kind of things like that, rather than selling, you know, boosters as much, or selling, you know, premium time and the like. And I think that that's just a better way to go. I know that a lot of you are going to be, you know, rolling your eyes saying, yes, Quadro, we know that you think that, because I've made like 4 videos on that topic and I constantly talk about it. But again, I'd like to just point out that I've talked about these issues, and here we have a game that is actually implementing exactly what I'm talking about, where you can monetize the game through the customization, and you can do very well by doing so, right? You can have a great game with a good grind that is still a nice grind. It's a fairly heavy grind. I'm not going to act like it's not, but you still are able to get through, and it feels like you're progressing and unlocking new stuff. It also, I'd like to point out the fact that in World War III, when you unlock new weapons and new guns and new vehicles and strikes, oftentimes it feels like it's actually a new thing. While Enlisted, you unlock a new mortar, and it's the same mortar in another, you know, campaign, or it's this, you know, it's just a mortar, so who cares? Or you unlock a Gewehr, and it's like, great, I already had this gun in a different campaign, I don't really care. In World War III, I unlocked the M416, and I was like, oh my god, this is the best gun in the game. And then I unlocked the barrel. I actually unlocked them in the other order, but it doesn't matter. And I was like, oh my god, this is the best gun in the game. And then I unlocked the AK-15, and I was like, oh my god, this is the best gun in the game. And it's just, so as I'm unlocking these weapons, I'm getting to play around with these new guns, and it's just so much fun to use a different style, and they all feel different, right? They feel like they're actually unique weapons all on their own, that feel different from one another. While in Enlisted, like I was saying before, things don't feel different. The FG-42 does not fundamentally feel different from the FG-42-2. And so what ends up happening is you only have like 10 or 15 levels in Enlisted in each campaign that actually feel like you're truly unlocking something new. And the rest just ends up being filler. World War III, at least from what I've seen at this point, for the first 30 levels or so, does not have that problem. Now, moving on to the general polish and just how the game kind of looks and feels, and, you know, things outside of gameplay, bugs, stuff like that. Gotta give it to Enlisted here. I mean, World War III is in beta. Obviously, so is Enlisted, I guess. But World War III is basically where Enlisted was a year ago. And that's a pretty important fact. But, God, there's a lot of bugs in this game, and they're very game-breaking bugs. There's a lot of times your gun just decides to stop having sound. I don't know if I'm firing too much and my soldiers just going deaf or something like that. Of course not. But there's lots of bugs in the game, and it's pretty game breaking. Kind of hurts the experience quite a lot. You have to restart your game every couple games just because of the fact that you'll end up losing sound, and the only way to fix it is to quit out of the game. There's also been a lot of server issues. They're mostly fixed at this point. I don't have a whole lot of server issues, and haven't in my recent time playing in the last week or two. But again, all that being said, I know a lot of people have had problems. There's lots of optimization problems. There's lots of issues with, controls being funky, or with just general kind of bugs and polish. And again, all this stuff may get evened out over time and may get ironed out. But as of right now, Enlisted is obviously in a much better place from a polish standpoint. It is much less buggy. It has much less issues in that regard. Obviously, it's been in the oven a little bit longer, and that will help. But regardless, I think that Enlisted and the devs of Enlisted do a great job at fixing bugs and fixing these kinds of issues that crop up. I do wish they did a little bit faster, but nevertheless, I think they do a great job of fixing these bugs when they pop up, especially the game-breaking ones. So in that regard, guys, definitely giving it to Enlisted. Enlisted does a great job at fixing those bugs. And overall, it just feels like a more complete and polished game. Next up, we're going to be talking about game mode. This will be a quick one. I think that both these games do great game modes, but one thing that I love about World War III is the TAC Ops game mode, which is basically just Conquest, but with a little twist on it. So in TAC Ops, instead of just having 3 capture points where you have to control all 3, or you have to control them and you generate points if you have a majority, or you generate points for each one, like, you know, standard Conquest in every game we've ever played ever. Instead of that, we have 6 objectives, and you have to control a pair of them, right? A zone, right? A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. And if you control both of those objectives, then you generate points. It's called a link, which creates really interesting tactical and strategic options for gameplay, where you're kind of sitting there and you're like, okay, well, we definitely need to generate some points, but maybe if we just break this one link that they have, then they'll stop generating points and we'll start generating points, right? You can just kind of like surgically strike the enemy in these kind of like undefended places, and it creates really dynamic gameplay where it's very back and forth. My games in World War III very often come down to the wire, right? They go down to the wire, and they're very close games. And I love that about it. And the games are always very long. Oftentimes games end without an actual, hitting the cap time, right? Or hitting the max amount of points to end the game. They'll end just after the 30 minutes, which is absolutely fantastic. So I love that about that game. I will say, obviously, it doesn't have anything like Enlisted has with Invasion. I really wish it did. I wish that we had something like Invasion in World War III. Hopefully we do get it in the future. I think Enlisted's Invasion and the Armored Train mode as well. Good job there, Gaijin and Darkflow. Very well done with the Armored Train. That is one of the most fun game modes I've played in Enlisted since release. So absolutely fantastic in regards to that. But man, the TAC Ops is such a great twist on Conquest. I hope that it becomes the standard somehow for games, because it is fantastic how much fun it is to play that game mode. Now, for the final thing that I want to talk about here, it is the out-of-game events. Now, Enlisted does a lot of events, and I like that a lot. They tend to do an event around the major things, like they did a D-Day event. They did an event for like the Modern Warfare event. I think all of those are great little things. I think they're very fun. They're engaging. They spice up gameplay. I'd like to see more of those. And I'm sure we will see more of those in the future, because that's one thing that Gaijin and Darkflow definitely do a lot of, is these neat little events where they like to test things for the future. And that's great. World War III could definitely do some events like that in the future. I'd love to see stuff like that, just these little side events. There's tons of ways that you could do these, I think. I'm not gonna speculate or come up with any ideas now, but I think that learning from what Enlisted is doing with those cool events would be a great thing. But the thing that I think Enlisted could learn from World War III is doing more drop events, right? World War III has been doing a drop event since Monday, and they're gonna be doing it for the next like 2 weeks or something like that, where everybody can come to Twitch, get drops. I'd love to see more drops from Enlisted, right? I'm sure we'll have some soon, but regardless, I just really wish Enlisted would do more drop events, because it's such a great, it's set up in such a way that they could easily do them, right? You don't need to put new guns in the game. You don't need to put new vehicle skins in the game, although you could, right? They could just do drops every week where you get bronze orders for watching, or silver orders for watching, where you watch for 10 hours in 1 week for Enlisted streamers, and you get a silver order, right? You get a silver troop order. You get a couple silver orders. And yes, guys, I realize that I am a streamer and I would directly benefit from this, and it is in a way kind of biased to be talking about it like this. Yes, I fully realize this. But nevertheless, I think that it would help you guys. It would help Enlisted grow as a game, because it's going to go through the free marketing that is Twitch, right? Everybody, if you guys don't realize what a massive marketing, missed opportunity that Twitch is, I don't know what to say, right, for Enlisted, because they really are missing out on a lot of potential eyes on the game, at least there. Regardless, I'd like to see more events like that, more drop events from Twitch. from Enlisted. And more importantly, one thing that I love about World War 3 that they're doing right now is World War 3 is doing a plus 50% XP event to go with their drop events, which is amazing. I cannot stress that enough, how amazing it is that this game is doing this drop event that is also coinciding with an XP boost. God, I wish Enlisted would do double XP weekends. Holy crap, I wish they would do any kind of event that would actually increase the amount of XP that we were getting. It would be absolutely fantastic. I cannot stress enough how much I wish Enlisted would do that. And I really just don't see a downside to do a double XP weekend every once in a while. Shit, do it every weekend for all I care. I mean, it's not going to break the bank of XP. People are not going to get that much XP because the reality is that you just don't even do it. Don't do it multiplicatively, whatever. You guys know what I mean. Right, with premium, just have it double your base score, and then premium doubles your base score. You don't double or anything like that. You're not getting times 8 XP or times 4, whatever it is. Right, just give people more XP with these events. I think it would be a great thing, and I'd be shocked if people in the comments would disagree with me on that one. But that is it, guys. That is all my comparisons that I can think of between these two games. Both games that I think are absolutely fantastic, and both games I think if you play either of them and have played either of them, I think you'd really enjoy the other one. So if you want to pick up World War 3, again, I have a link down in the description below to get the game and also help support my channel. I believe it is on sale right now. We're getting plus 50% XP and we're getting drops, so would be very good. If you want those drops, twitch.tv/HeyQuadro. You can find the link for that down in the description, and you can also join our community Discord for some good custom games for Enlisted, or if you're just looking for people to play with and want to join a great community. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy.